George Clooney is making headlines again. And no, it's not because of a new movie or a big directing project. This time he's jumped into the world of politics. Yes, the same George Clooney who once played Batman in a way that looked more like a fashion show than a superhero film is now sharing his thoughts on global affairs. It seems he's decided that what the world really needs right now is his take on political matters. Forget the experts or people working in the field. Clooney, known more these days for coffee commercials than hard-hitting commentary, has stepped up to give us his opinion. Whether we asked for it or not, he's in the conversation again, and people are talking.
Well, he's you know what? He realizes that he's winning. I think that's bothering you, Bill.
Well, it is bothering me because, again, he's an insurrectionist who doesn't believe in democracy, so of course it's bothering me. And of course he's also insane and a criminal and stupid.
Except for that, Bill.
But I gotta say,
that, I'll vote for him.
Like, what works for him, like when that clip you just shown, I mean, look, he's almost the same age as Biden, but Biden presents as old, ancient.
Yeah.
That does not look old.
No, it doesn't.
He does not present as old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like Kiss. He puts on the wig and the face paint, and it's 1976 all over again.
Those were the.
Yes, George. I'm too good looking to be wrong. Clooney has had another one of those moments where fame and reality just don't mix. He strolled into the political spotlight like he was delivering some grand truth, as if being a movie star automatically made him a voice of reason. But let's be honest, just because someone's spent years in front of a camera doesn't mean they're suddenly an expert on world affairs, and reality came knocking hard. It wasn't long before he ran into pushback from people who weren't dazzled by his looks or celebrity status. Both Megyn Kelly and Greg Gutfeld called him out. And let's just say it wasn't pretty. After getting thoroughly shut down in the public debate, the only thing Clooney really looked ready to campaign for was a box of tissues and maybe a little less airtime.
George Clooney wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times claiming that after he saw Biden's condition at the recent fundraiser, he doesn't think he's up for the gig. George Clooney, couldn't he tell him that in person, for God's sakes? He has to write an op-ed piece?
I will be damned if I will use whatever little platform I have to demean and weaken our commander-in-chief and the one man standing between Donald Trump and the White House.
This is the same George Clooney who's been known to dish out life advice to everyday Americans, all while relaxing at his $100 million villa on Lake Como, probably sipping imported sparkling water. Let's be honest, it's hard to take someone seriously about real-world issues when they haven't seen the inside of a gas station in decades. Chances are the last time he passed a Walmart was back when ER was still airing new episodes. But somehow he's convinced he understands the struggles of the average working person. Nothing says man of the people like hopping on a private jet to lecture farmers about climate change. What's next? Dental tips delivered from the deck of a yacht made entirely of pearls.
Stern has declared himself woke as all hell, and there's a reason he's doing that. The reason is because he's spent the last several decades being an absolutely degraded piece of bleep. I mean, if you have ever listened to Howard Stern's show, this is not a person with high moral principle, and yet now he reflects all of the highest principles of the far left. Why? Because that buys you immunity in this world. He's transgressive when it comes to, things sexual, but he's not transgressive when it comes to his politics. When it comes to his politics, he is a down-the-line lefty all the way up to and including everything related to the 97th vaccine dose. Again, this is the sort of stuff that buys you immunity. The true vaccination in Hollywood is being a leftist.
Clooney's stumble here wasn't just about politics. It felt bigger than that. It was like the universe finally decided it had enough of the polished act, the charming speeches, and the perfectly timed smirks. You can only coast on charisma for so long before someone steps up and gives you a dose of reality. Sharp, sarcastic, and served with a generous helping of public embarrassment. Let's be real. George Clooney's whole approach to politics feels like a rich guy playing dress-up in moral high ground. He shows up, blinks those carefully moisturized eyes, and seems to think the world should stop and listen. After all, didn't he once play a doctor on TV? Who needs actual education, experience, or even basic common sense when George feels the truth deep in his soul? And if you don't immediately agree, well, clearly you're just not sophisticated enough to get it. What made this whole situation even more entertaining was how genuinely Clooney seemed to believe he'd walk in, drop a few polished lines, and get a standing ovation, like he was accepting an award instead of wading into a serious debate. But instead of applause, he got hit with some tough, well-aimed takedowns by people who weren't swayed by charm, dimples, or repackaged Hollywood talking points. Watching Clooney get completely outmatched in a real conversation was like watching someone toss a luxury watch into a demolition derby, shiny, expensive, and completely out of its depth. And his reaction? Oh, classic Clooney. That furrowed brow, the slightly hurt expression, and that faint look of confusion. As if he truly couldn't wrap his head around the idea that someone out there might not see him as the living symbol of wisdom and cinematic greatness. He looked less like a thought leader and more like a substitute teacher, realizing the class isn't impressed by his sweater vest and outdated VHS tapes. Suddenly, the man who seemed to think he was a modern-day Zeus stepping down from the heavens was getting roasted like the school mascot at a homecoming game. And then there's the way he speaks. Clooney doesn't make arguments, he performs them. Every sentence is soaked in theatrical emotion, like he just finished reading a heartfelt poem about dolphins and needs a moment to recover. He could be talking about parking regulations, and it would still sound like he's mourning the fall of an ancient civilization. With all the dramatic pauses, soft-spoken intensity, and that constant head tilt, he doesn't come across as persuasive so much as someone mid-shoot for a black and white cologne ad next, but the moment someone like Greg Gutfeld throws a sharp jab his way, Clooney's whole polished act starts to crumble. The Hollywood glow fades, and what's left is just another celebrity who mistook fame for wisdom. Spoiler alert, being well-known doesn't mean you're always right. Then Megyn Kelly steps in, not gently, and cuts through the performance with the precision of someone who's done this before. Her response hit hard, and all of Clooney's carefully crafted moral high ground just collapsed into a mess of wounded pride. He came expecting to give a TED Talk, but what he got was more like a live roast, and he was the main course. There's something oddly satisfying about watching someone who hasn't been told no since the late 90s finally get challenged. For decades, Clooney's been surrounded by people calling him smart, brave, and brilliant, mostly because they were hoping to score an invite to his Lake Como parties. But this time, someone called out the obvious. His political opinions have about as much depth as a kiddie pool during a heat wave. You could almost picture his publicist in full panic mode, clutching a glass of Merlot like it was holy water, frantically typing how to do damage control for overconfident celebrities into Google. Somewhere in a Beverly Hills office, a team of overly caffeinated PR interns was probably lighting scented candles and whispering, "Serenity now," hoping to undo the latest verbal mess Clooney had just served to a not-so-impressed public. Meanwhile, there he was, George, staring blankly ahead, genuinely surprised that his famously rugged looks hadn't magically erased what he just said. Words so tone-deaf and off-base, they probably deserved their own reality show. This is exactly what happens when someone confuses being photogenic with being profound. For years, Clooney's been treated like the human equivalent of a luxury robe, smooth, comforting, and completely unnecessary outside of select moments. He walks into a room and people clap like it's some divine event. He furrows his brow and suddenly he's being handed honorary degrees in international relations. Honestly, the man could sneeze into a microphone and the next morning, 3 glossy magazines would call him the new voice of reason.